Kristen and I, we bought our first home in 2006. We broke even when we sold it 3 years later, and I had no idea how much money I left on the table. These are the 7 things that I wish I knew before using my VA loan the first time. Here's a question I just got, and I want you to see if you can spot the one thing that this gentleman is absolutely doing right. It's Weldon. I'm active duty Space Force at Peterson Space Force Base, and I'm about to use my VA loan for the first time. Everyone says it's the best benefit that we have, but I have no idea where to start. What are the most important things that I need to know before I start looking at houses? I don't want to mess this up. I love it because in that sentence, in that what he wrote there, they are acknowledging that there might be some things that they don't know and they are seeking out the guidance. A plus in my book. That awareness right there, that puts them ahead of 90% of first-time homebuyers, acknowledging that they don't know what they don't know. I certainly didn't whenever we used our VA loan the first time. When we bought that house in Oklahoma City in 2006, that was during the great crisis, the great housing crisis. Money was easy to come by. Interest rates, they were in the low sixes, very close to where they are now. In fact, right now might be beating that as we speak. But we sold in 2009. We broke even. We moved on. It was the perfect investment property. If we had just held on, it would have been a windfall. But hindsight, it's 2020. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what questions to ask, what numbers to run, and how to avoid the mistakes that cost military families real money, real opportunity. I'm even going to show you how one of my clients got into her home for less than $1,000 out of pocket. Now let's get into it with point number 1, and that's that you can put $0 down when you use your VA loan. And of course, this is the headline benefit that everyone talks about, and it's real. It is an incredible opportunity because with that VA loan, when you're not required to put anything down, you're able to keep that in your pocket. Conventional loans, though, that typically requires 3 to 20%. And then if you have a VA FHA loan, well, that requires 3.5%. Again, VA, zero, nada. Now, let me show you what that looks like, and let's use a $400,000 home as an example. So 3% down, that's going to be $12,000. 20% down, that's $80,000. With your VA loan, you can keep that $80,000 or $12,000, whatever it is. You keep it in your pocket and find an alternative use. Now, does that mean that you should always put down zero? No, not necessarily. There are definitely situations where a small down payment that can reduce your funding fee, reduce your interest rate, give you more equity up front. But the point is, you have options as civilian buyers they just don't have. This is your benefit. You earned it. Use it strategically. Quick note, if you are PCSing or considering using your VA loan, go to start.askweldonhobbs.com. Your home, this purchase that you're considering, this is a wealth move. So watch the class there, and we're going to go over the numbers. There's going to be a calculator, and then you can understand the timeline also of what to expect. And if you need it, you can request a trusted match for a professional anywhere across the country. I have a network. I spend time interviewing these folks, make sure they're trained and ready to serve you. Point number 2 is there's no PMI ever. This one, it does not get enough attention. And PMI stands for private mortgage insurance. So it's something that conventional and FHA borrowers, they have to pay this when you put down less than 20%. So here's the math, and we're going to use a $400,000 home as the example here. So with that 3% down, the PMI, that's going to run you anywhere from $150 to $250 per month. That is a lot of money. And over a 5-year period, you're talking $9,000 to $15,000. Just poof, gone. And with FHA loans, you're paying mortgage insurance for the entire life of the loan, unless you choose to refinance, which typically has some costs with it, but you'll have to talk to your lender to see what they offer. Now, with your VA loan, no PMI, period. You could put zero down and still never pay a dime of mortgage insurance. This is one of the most undervalued benefits of the VA loan. When you compare loan types, folks typically look at the interest rate and then they look at the down payments and then the overall payment that's required, and they forget about the PMI. That mistake can cost you thousands, but as a veteran or an active duty service member, you've earned it and you don't have to pay it. Now, number 3, the VA funding fee, the one cost you do pay. So here's where a lot of first-time VA buyers, they get surprised. The VA loan, it does not have the PMI, but it does have something called the funding fee. This is a one-time fee that goes directly to the VA to help keep the program running for future veterans. For the first use with zero down, the VA funding fee, that's 2.15% of your loan amount. So on a $400,000 loan, that's $8,600. Now here's the good news. You don't have to pay that out of pocket. That can be rolled into your loan, but you need to know that it's there because it affects your total loan amount and that affects your total monthly payment. And here's an important note to remember. If you have a service connected disability rating of 10% or higher, you're actually exempt from this funding fee entirely. Now, that's potentially $8,000 or more that you never have to pay. But you need to prepare. You need to bring that documentation for whenever you do your loan approval and get pre-approved for your home. And then you're exempt if you have a 10% or higher disability rating. Point number 4, you need your certificate of eligibility. And oftentimes you'll hear this is called the COE. Before you can use your VA loan, you need to prove that you're actually eligible for it. And that's what the COE does. So it is a document from the VA, and that's going to show your entitlement, how much the VA will actually guarantee of that loan on your behalf. So getting it, it's actually pretty straightforward and simple. You can request it through eBenefits. You can go through your lender, which I find that to be the easiest way, or by mail. So most lenders, though, again, they can pull it for you in minutes if you give them the permission to do so. But what you want to look for on your COE, that's your entitlement amount. And then specifically, if you have that full entitlement or a partial entitlement. And you're probably wondering, Weldon, what in the world is that? Well, if you've used your VA loan before and you still have a loan outstanding, you may have a partial entitlement. That can affect how much you can borrow without a down payment. If this is the first time using the benefit, though, you likely have the full entitlement and you're probably good to go. But don't skip this step. Get your COE before you start shopping. It's going to tell you and your lender exactly what you're working with. And point number 5, this is the VA appraisal and minimum property requirements. Mike Papa Romeo. So this is where deals, they can fall apart if you are not prepared. When you use the VA loan, or that's the loan that you're pursuing, the property actually has to be appraised by a VA assigned appraiser. And that appraiser, they're not just looking at the value of the home. They're actually checking to make sure the property meets the VA's MPRs, minimum property requirements. So it's an additional role that they typically don't have with a conventional loan. Minimum property requirements, they're basically the VA's way of saying the home has to be safe, sanitary, and structurally sound. Things that can trigger MPR issues. It's going to be peeling paint on older homes, missing handrails on stairs, and then exposed wiring, broken HVAC systems, roof damage, and pest infestations. Now, most homes, they pass. But if you're looking at a fixer-upper or an older property, you need to know that the VA appraisal, they might flag issues that have to be fixed before closing. And that seller may or may not be in the position to fix it. So this is why you want a real estate professional walking right alongside you. Because if they understand VA loans, they know what they're looking for. So that way you don't spend the money on the inspection. You don't spend money on the appraisal and then get to this point of the deal and all of a sudden it falls apart and you've wasted time and money. No one likes that. Point number 6, pre-approval, it still matters. Do not skip it. Now, I've seen this mistake time and time again. Someone hears VA loan, zero down, best benefit ever, and they start shopping for homes without actually getting pre-approved first. They have no idea what their budget amount is. I also want to make clear that pre-qualification is different than pre-approval. Don't confuse those two terms. Pre-qualification, that is a quick estimate based on what you tell the lender. The pre-approval, though, that's when the lender actually verifies your income, your credit, your debt, and gives you a real number that you can shop within because it meets the debt-to-income ratio. Sellers, they take pre-approvals more seriously. So in a competitive environment, in a competitive market, you can understand that without a pre-approval, your offer, it may not even get considered. And here's something else, just because you're approved for a certain amount, that does not mean that you should spend that much. The general rule of thumb that I like to use is that your mortgage payment on a monthly basis, that should be no more than 28% of your gross monthly income. When you start going much higher than that, you risk becoming house broke, house poor, where the house that starts to eat up every other area of your life. And those areas become financial struggles. I've seen it happen. Good families serving our country. They're stretched so thin that one unexpected expense, a car repair, a medical bill, that puts them in crisis. Don't let that be you. Know your numbers before you shop. Set yourself up for success before you dive all the way in. Point number 7, you can use your VA loan more than once. So, this is a myth that continues to get perpetuated, and it costs military families the most wealth over time. A lot of people think that the VA loan is a one time benefit, use it and it's gone, but that couldn't be further from the truth. You can use your VA loan multiple times. When you sell a home and then you pay it off, and you use the VA loan originally, look, your entitlement actually gets restored. You can use it again. And in some cases, you can even have two VA loans open at the same time if you have enough entitlement and you're relocating for a PCS. A lender will, of course, tell you exactly what is available to you. This matters because real estate is one of the most powerful wealth building tools available to military families. Every time you PCS, you have an opportunity. Buy smart, hold the property, rent it out when you leave, and over time, you're building a portfolio, not just buying a house. Now, everyone's risk tolerances are different. It might not be for you, but I am saying buy with that in mind in case you were forced to do it. I didn't understand that in 2006 when we bought, sold, broke even, and then moved on. If I'd known then what I found out a few years later, that we could have held on to that property, rented it out, and I could have used my VA loan again at my next duty station, we'd have created more opportunity. But fast forward to 2011, we bought a small townhome, we used our VA loan, and this time we bought with intention. We bought knowing that we could rent it out later. The cash flow, like, it was tight, but all the indicators said that we'd increase in value. So this was a personal risk that we took on. I don't recommend it for everyone, but for us, it worked out. We bought with no out-of-pocket costs, and we held it. Our thought process was, if we don't take any action, we're going to be in the same position tomorrow as we are today. So we made sure to educate ourselves, find the right information, and it made all the difference for our situation. Now, I want to tell you about a recent client of mine, a PCS buyer, first-time VA home loan user. Now, she couldn't see the home in person. She was actually buying from across the country. They're under time constraints, just like many of you are dealing with. So we did the virtual walkthrough, and together we turned on the sound. I wanted to make sure she heard everything that I heard. I knew the area well enough to be able to walk her through the neighborhoods, tell her the pros and cons, school districts, commute, everything in it. All the things that you're never going to find on Zillow. Here's what ended up happening. She got into the home for less than $1,000 out of pocket. We negotiated with the seller to cover her VA funding fee, and then with some of the money left over, it actually covered her appraisal or inspection, everything that the lender could optimize for her situation. I don't recommend buying without seeing, but sometimes we have to do what we have to do, especially in the military profession. We're all under constraints, and again, when we're in uniform, it makes it difficult. I get it. But that's why finding the right real estate professional who knows the area, why that is so critical. And this is what I do. I connect active duty, reservists, guardsmen, and veterans to reputable, values-aligned, trained agents across the country. People I trust who understand your plans, your wealth goals, that if this move goes wrong, it could set you back decades, but if it goes right, it can propel you forward decades. Look in the link below, click it, it goes to start.askweldonhobbs.com. You're going to see the VA loan class there and the opportunity to request a connection to that values aligned agent. And I'm happy to make that connection for you to interview them and make sure they're the right fit. You're also going to find a VA loan calculator and guides. That way you are equipped to make this next decision. All of it's free, link below. I'm Weldon Hobbs, veteran, personal financial coach, real estate professional, and I've helped hundreds of military families navigate these exact transitions. Remember, Good decisions, it starts with good information, and I'll see you in the next one.